Excellent.
Hey, thanks for tuning into the Rextra Show. Today we're going to go over Netplay on the Raspberry Pi 3B+. Now, some of this tutorial will be pertinent to other types of Netplay, such as on your PC or through RetroArch, but it's tailored specifically for the Raspberry Pi 3B+. I will do another video on Netplay through RetroArch through PC, but for this one, strictly tailored to the Raspberry Pi 3B+. Now, ETA Prime did a video a while back with Drew Talks, and it was a very good video on Netplay through the Pi, but he left out some pertinent information, I thought, related to UPNP and manual port forwarding. I'm going to go over the manual port forwarding part as well as UPNP and try and give you some information on the difference between the two. So, in order to have your Netplay work with the Raspberry Pi 3B+, you're going to have to turn on your UPNP setting on your router, or you're going to have to manually port forward the port 55435, which is the RetroArch port, through your router. So there's two different trains of thought here. The UPNP functionality is the easiest functionality. You simply turn it on your router, and I'm going to show you how to do that as much as I can. I'm going to be blurring out a lot of the information, some non-pertinent, some pertinent, but it's only to protect myself. So I'm going to give you as much information as I can on how to port forward your router. Now, make note that every router is different, so you're going to have to look at your manual for certain tips on how to open your ports, but I'm going to try and help you as best I can with this tutorial. So let's first take a look at how to access your router, and then we'll start talking about UPNP and manual port forwarding. So the first thing you're going to need to do is access your router. Now, in order to do that, you're going to need your default gateway IP address, and you're going to punch it into the browser URL right here. So usually this starts with something like 192, some address like that, and then it's going to launch you to a menu where you log into your router. And you'll get something like this. I'm using a TP-Link router, and again, every router is different. If you don't know your default gateway, you can simply enter a command prompt, type in ipconfig, hit enter, and then you'll see your default gateway pop open, or your default gateway in the detail screen here. Now, you're going to need to create an account if you don't have one. But if you do, you're going to have to log into your router. And once you do, you're going to get a different menu than me, most likely, unless you're using the same router. But you should be able to easily turn on UPNP. Now, what is UPNP? UPNP stands for Universal Plug and Play. It basically is the standard for letting computers and routers and other devices that connect to a network share information about what services they are running, and then automatically connecting those services when they need them. So in the example of RetroArch, when another person tries to connect to your RetroArch, you are opening the ports automatically in order for them to connect and play on Netplay. Now, most routers have UPNP turned off as a default. You're going to have to turn it on if you want to use the UPNP. Now, again, you can turn on UPNP, or you can manually port forward each individual port. So different emulators or different systems, standalone emulators have different ports that are open. For RetroArch, they commonly use 55435. That's why you'll see that in the port setting in the Raspberry Pi Netplay menu, because that is the default. Other standalone emulators will use a different port. So if you're using something like ZSNES or Gens emulator, those use different ports. Okay, so if we're going to use the UPNP functionality, you have to have three things in order to make UPNP work. Number one, the router must have the support for UPNP port forwarding, and it must be enabled. Number two, the computer OS must have UPNP port forward support, and the function must be enabled. Now, when we talk about the computer in this example, we're talking about the Pi. The Pi enables UPNP when you go into the game launch menu and you select launch with Netplay. Now, I will show you that later in the video when we do a demonstration. But for right now, just note that our Raspberry Pi does have the functionality to do that. And then the third thing is the program that you're using that requires the port forwarding must have the support for UPnP. Now, in this example, it would be RetroArch within the Pi through RetroPie. So basically, the RetroArch program does have the UPnP functionality, and both the client and the hoster will be using RetroArch, which does have UPnP functionality for opening the ports and talking to each port. So we're good there with those systems. Now, a lot of people who watch my videos have a classic console, and some of them have a Wi-Fi adapter. The issue with the Classic, from my understanding and from the people that mod my Classic, is that the Classic, the kernel built in, and the chip just doesn't have the functionality for UPnP or direct port forwarding. Therefore, you have to use the relay server when you're doing Netplay on a Classic console if you have a Wi-Fi adapter and if you have it modded, etc. So if I'm wrong, please put it in the comments, and we'd love to know how you got direct connect port forwarding working on your Classic console. Moving on. Now, for me, it was simple to turn on UPnP. I just went to Advanced, NAT Forwarding, UPnP, and I simply click on UPnP. When you have some clients connected and you're in this screen, you will see the port that is open and being used in this menu. But right now I don't have any ports open or being used, so you see nothing here. Now, what are the disadvantages to using UPnP? Well, there is some security risk because UPnP automatically opens ports that another program tells it to. So unless you're on your PC and you have a firewall blocking the ports, and you need to do separate settings in order to open those ports in a firewall as well, not just through your router, then you're going to be open to certain systems or programs accessing ports automatically through UPnP. Now, what's the risk? I don't know how severe the risk is, but it's enough for me not to use UPnP and instead manually open each port individually, which I will show you how to do next. So I'm going to turn this off, and we're going to have to do a couple different settings here on my router. First thing is, I'm going to have to go to my DHCP server settings. And what I'm going to have to do is add an address reservation for each system that I want to allow port opening. So for each system, it has an individual IP address. So the Raspberry Pi, when you go to show me my IP or show IP, you're going to have to open up an address reservation for that unit, for that console. It's very simple. You simply add here. You're going to get your MAC address, your reserved IP address, and that's basically all you need. Now, if you don't have your MAC address or it doesn't show your MAC address, your router should show all your current client lists when they're somewhere in your fields that have the MAC address and the assigned IP. So if you know the IP address, you can match up your MAC address. There's many ways to find the MAC address for your Pi, but it should be already on your router once it's connected to your router. Now, once you have that address reservation in, which I needed to do for my TP-Link, you may or may not have to do it for your router, but it's something you may need to look at in your manual or test to see if it works without it. Now again, turning UPnP on, you don't have to do any of this. You simply turn it on and go. Now, the second step we have to do for manual port forwarding is go back to our NAT forwarding, and for my router, I have to go to virtual servers, not port triggering. Okay, you would think it would be port triggering, but in actuality, I use the virtual servers. Again, in here, you're just going to add a virtual server. You're going to put the external port as 55435, the internal port is 55435, and you're going to add your internal IP address, which is the IP address of the Pi. Once you set all this up, you may want to test to see if your port is open. Now, both ways with UPNP on, you can test it without doing the manual port forwarding, or you can just turn UPNP off, do the manual port forwarding, and test your port opening. In order to do that, though, you first need to start Netplay on one of your games on your Pi. You don't need somebody to connect, but you simply need to start Netplay. Once you start Netplay, you can simply go to canyouseme.org. Canyouseme.org, you'll have your external IP address here, and then you put the port in that you want to check to see if it's open. So 55435. I'm going to hit check port, and you can see I got success. It'll say a failure if your port is not open. And again, you must start Netplay to check if your port is open first. So start the Netplay on your Pi and then check to see if your port is open. Once you know that your port is open, you're going to be able to utilize Netplay. Okay, now that we have one of our players set up on UPNP or port forwarding, it's time to go set up our settings for Netplay in the RetroPie menu, RetroArch Netplay. Both the host, the person who set up their UPNP or port forwarding, and the client, the one connecting to the host, are going to have to input some settings here. For the client, we're going to need the external IP of the host. The host can get his external IP in this menu right here at the top where you see it says external. He needs to provide that to the client. Now, the client will go into option 1 and they will set themselves as the client. And then they're going to go down to number 3 and set the host IP address. This is the external IP that the host has provided to the client. Now, in this menu, it's going to be a little difficult. Maybe you're going to need a keyboard, but getting the cursor into that box and typing was a little bit troublesome for me in the beginning. I had to use the arrow keys to get the cursor in there. You don't see it blinking, but just start typing and you'll be able to get that external IP in there. Then you're going to click OK. And then basically you're just going to go down and save the configuration. Now, for the host, they're going to have to go into number 1 and make sure their setting is H for host, set as host. And basically, again, you both are just making sure the port is 55435. You can set a nickname and then save configuration. And now you'll be all set, both the host and the client, to start Netplay. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple demonstrations. First, I'd like to thank Kamla. He is the individual who is the client here in these examples. It looks like it's pronounced Kamla, but it's actually pronounced Kamla. So thanks to him for taking the time to help me with this tutorial. Now, before we get started, I would just like to say that there's many variables that are going to impact the performance of your Netplay. First off is the console or the emulator type. Some emulators run better with Netplay than others. Then you have the game ROM, you have the speed of your processor, and you have the speed of your internet, all variables that are going to affect your gameplay. So what that means is there's a lot of trial and error with different emulators and even games that may or may not play on Netplay as well as you would like. Now, for this demonstration, my internet speeds were approximately 35 megabits per second on Ethernet. I personally was having some issues and still have some issues with my Ethernet connection as I am getting faster speeds on the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. I'm getting up to 85. Now the Pi 3B Plus will go up to about 250 megabits per second according to my research, but only, like I said, 80, 90 on the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. So if you have any comments of why I'm not getting fast speeds on the Ethernet, please put them in the comments. I would like to hear what is going wrong with my Ethernet connection. I got the guys on Single Board Computer Group working on that as well, and hopefully they can help me solve this issue. So also, my Raspberry Pi 3B Plus is slightly overclocked along with Kamla's Raspberry Pi. Now, Kamla has he's on Wi-Fi. He's not even on Ethernet in this demonstration. I'm assuming he's getting about 30 megabits per second on his Wi-Fi. So when you take a look at this demonstration, keep all that in mind. And again, these are just examples, not necessarily what you will get out of yours. So the first game we're going to test here is going to be a Nintendo ROM, and we're going to play a co-op hack of Super Mario Brothers. When you open up the game and when you start to launch the game, the host has to be first, and he has to enter the menu when you see this box come up. Then he goes down to launch with Netplay enabled. Once he does that, he'll see the connection, and then that is when the client can go in and do the same, launch with Netplay enabled as well. Now, you saw me connect, and right there you see Cumla connect in the bottom left. Sorry it's so small, but you can see that he has joined. So, there's him and I playing this Mario hack. The play is actually excellent for Nintendo. We expected it to be very good. Didn't really hear any audio glitches or no issues with the gameplay whatsoever. There was like a quick glitch right there, maybe. I don't know if that was the ROM glitch or what, but nothing significant in this game that would deter us from wanting to play or being able to play. So we played a couple levels of that, and it ran fine. We then moved on to Pico Drive, Sega CD. So we launch again and launch with Netplay. The host goes first. And in this example, it started off really well. The sound started good. I thought we were going to have some good success with this. We really wanted to play the NHL 94 version. It looks like it's going to run well. And then once that menu comes up, you can hear the sound is terrible. Then Cumla joins as player 2, and then he automatically disconnects. We tried that a few times, so it appeared Pico Drive wasn't going to work for us. So we moved on to Super Nintendo. We had to change to 2005 SNES 9X. That core actually works a lot better than other cores, and ETA Prime said the same thing. So you'll see I joined as player 1. You'll see Cumla join shortly. There he is. And once he joins, we go into the options, and we both can change our controls to the settings we wanted. Now, fight games are a little tricky. If you like to play fight games online with Netplay, usually Fightcade or GGPO emulators are the ones you want to use, especially for MAME. But you can get by with Super Nintendo and some other 16-bit systems, so to speak, that will play Netplay well. So this was pretty good. We had some audio that wasn't that great, but overall it was pretty good Netplay. It was, it was playable. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. And again, if you have faster internet, you'll probably even get a little better performance out of something like this. It's a nice Shuriken. Oh, and there I just beat him. Round 1.
You win.
So the audio hasn't been that great. Now you can mess with your settings in RetroArch. You can also mess with your latency settings for the video, which may help. A lot of people claim that doing latency frames between 1 and 3 in the video, I believe that's in the video settings, the settings video, then latency frames maybe. It might be in the network. I can't remember off the top of my head. Also, you can mess with some audio settings, might help. But whatever you do, you want to be matched up exactly the same. So if you're on latency frames, then you want him to be on the same amount of latency frames, and same with anything else. Anything else, whether it's VSync or audio, whatever you're doing, you want it to be the same on each person's RetroArch settings. So you see, we were able to play this game, play a match. I think I let Cumla beat me here just to make him feel good. So Okay, so then we went to MAME, and we were going to play the original Street Fighter 2. And we used FBA Alpha 2012 in this example. This is going to be one where you're going to want to try different emulators, I would think. It's time consuming for the trial and error, but you know, if you really want to get a game working, you're going to have to change a lot of variables and test out a lot of stuff. Now obviously in this you don't have the luxury of changing your controls. You'll see he joins right there. So you're going to have to change your controls in advance in RetroArch. Get your controls right, and then you'll be able to use your own controls. Now, again, this seemed a little slow, a little audio choppiness. It wasn't horrible. I mean, the game to begin with is kind of slow, but we were able to get a match in. It wasn't that bad. But I detected a little lagginess, a little bit of slow play, and this is where I'm saying, you know, most people who play fighting games or MAME, just MAME in general, they're going to use Fightcade or GGPO and be on a PC. You're not going to be able to use that on the Raspberry Pi. And you hear that elephant, it gets annoying, especially when it's not as crisp as it should be. We would have liked to test some more MAME games, but you can find other videos with testing of some MAME. I know ETA Prime and Drew Talks did some more MAME, I believe, in their video. Oh, I got him on the ropes. Oh, there we go. So not unplayable, but not the best either. Okay, then we wanted to play Super Street Fighter. You can see the emulator, launch with Netplay. There's me joining as player 1. Should see Cumlaw join shortly. There he is. Joins as player 2. Put turbo speed 2. So the play wasn't that bad. A little bit of glitchiness. Audio again, not the greatest. Not necessarily unplayable, but you know, these fighting games are difficult, and MAME is difficult to play online with Netplay. But we wanted to test it out. We wanted to see if it was playable. It wasn't horrible, but it's not like playing next to each other. So then we went on over to Sega Mega Drive, Sega Genesis, and we're going to try a little NHL 94. So when it kicks off, it looks like it's going to start really good, sounds really good. And I will say I was pleasantly surprised with how well it ran. We played a full game, didn't have many glitches or errors at all. I think we were both happy with the gameplay. So thumbs up on Sega Genesis with the, I believe it was the Genesis Plus X emulator. But with that said, guys, good luck with your Netplay. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I love to hear from you guys. And with that, thanks for watching the Rexer Show, and I'll leave you with a little bit of NHL 94 action to end the video with. Thanks again, guys.